And now we're going to have a chance to go through some of those questions, another round of Q&A. So I'd like to invite you, Joao Korngold, to join us here. And while I'm introducing Joao, I also want to back into the stage here. Dan Assisi, Suzana Simoes, Andreia, Marshall Neto, Kirsten DeMelo, and Anahy Fonseca. So welcome back. And Joao Korngold is a co-founder and director of both the Spiritist Group of New York and the Spiritist Alliance for Books. With his extensive involvement in the U.S. Spiritist movement, he has played a crucial role in leading mediumship meetings and has been a dedicated speaker and leading Spiritist study groups. So now with you, the group. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome back. It has been a very enlightened day with a lot of learning experiences. Thank you for the questions that you sent. So let us start in order, right, of the presenter. So the first one goes to Dan. Dan, due to the sufferings of life, one can easily become indifferent. How can Spiritism help this difficult feeling?
Hello, everyone. First of all, let me just say how exciting it is to have an opportunity to do questions and answers. Spiritism started with questions and answers. It's all about questions and answers. It's in our DNA. Inquiry is in the DNA, Spiritism. So that's a wonderful question and a very practical one, too. I can see why we would sometimes desensitize ourselves to the suffering in the world, because it's a coping mechanism sometimes. There's so much happening that I can see why we would say, I'm not going to pay attention to that. So I understand that. But I would urge all of us to not let ourselves slide into a point where we are indifferent to other people's suffering, because we don't want people to be indifferent to us either. I also understand that sometimes we may feel a certain sense of helplessness about what is it that we can do today. I'll give you an example to try to make it more personal. Today, as we were walking here from the hotel, we saw a lot of our unhoused neighbors living in the streets. And that's a problem that we see growing in many different parts of the world, including my hometown, or at least my town now, San Diego. And I have grappled and wrestled with that because I don't know what I can do to help end homelessness. But I do know that I can at least acknowledge and smile and say hello. I can offer that which I have in that moment, even if it's not enough to solve the problem long term. I can just be there for that moment. Is it enough? For that moment, for me, it is, because I can't do anything else. So I fight the feeling of I am not going to look at our friends. I'm not going to think about it because the problem is so big that I can't tackle it. It's okay to wrestle with a challenge. But at the same time, we want to make sure that we do it in a way that it doesn't handicap us forever, right? Like, we don't want to spiral into worrying about a problem so much that we can't go about our daily lives. So finding that medium, finding that balance between being empathic and caring and leading us to some sort of action is very important. So I would suggest that we should not just brush it under the carpet, whatever it is. Because the truth is, tomorrow it could be us, it could be somebody we care. And that person that's going to whatever challenge you're facing, it's somebody's children, right? They have a mother and a father who cares for them. And even a Buddhist practice of thinking about it that way is saying, like, what if you were their mother? What would you do? So I think empathy is a very powerful tool. I invite us to bring that into our lives and understand that even if we can't find a final solution to the problem, we can at least offer that which we have at that moment. And maybe we can still try to figure how to help people afterwards and offer prayers and offer help and lend a hand. But try to fight that feeling of indifference, because that's really dangerous territory for the soul, right? In the moment that we are indifferent to everything else, we're disconnected. And that it probably does not bode well for our own mental health and emotional health in the long term. because no man is an island, as the poet would say, right? No person is an island. So let's try to fight that and remember that we're all connected. If we go back to our spirituality and to our sense of immortality and community, and then it becomes easier for us to remember that we're just in different sides of a situation, but that with being present and being kind is at least a start. That's how I would face that.
Thanks, Dan. So, Andreia, second, how can we go on and not sin anymore when we do not know how to do it better?
Thank you. Is this on? Okay. Thank you.
You want?
First and foremost, I just wanted to say thanks for the IT guys that are responsible for the transmission. People are watching at home, and it's because of them. So thank you for the beautiful work they're doing. The best way that we can explain, and just for those that are watching, you know, the sin is such a harsh word, right? It brings back a lot of memories that perhaps was one of the reasons that it led us away from religiousness, as Anahy, Dr. Anahy was talking about the difference between the words. To sin means to miss the mark. That's what it means, to make it lighter and easier to comprehend. And that's something that we do almost every day, whether in action or thought. We are not always crispy clean, right? It's something that we still deal with. It's something that it's still hard for us to rid ourselves of. Because as we were talking about reincarnation, the experiences that we have had as immortal spirits, it's the sum of all that we have been through and have walked through, but we still have to do a little more to reach plenitude, and that's the truth. But St. Augustine comes to our rescue. In the Gospel According to Spiritism, in the Spirit's book, he will tell us about the way that we can actually lead better lives, seeking harmony and balance. And he would say, do as I do, as I did when I was alive. At the end of each day, I would do an assessment, a daily assessment of my actions. And whatever it is that we realized wasn't so great, we would reflect upon it, and the next day try to do better. And that's what we should do. It is not always easy, because we might leave the Spiritist Center feeling very whole and very happy, and then somebody cuts in front of us in traffic, and we get irritated, right? Right away, that feeling that we have held for so long through different incarnations comes up, flares up, and that's quite okay. One of the things that we must realize, or better yet, I wouldn't say must, but perhaps we should realize, is what Joanna de Angelis talks about in being awake. We are no longer spirits that are asleep. We are already awakened. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here on a Saturday afternoon listening to different speakers and seeking knowledge with Spiritism, this beautiful body of knowledge that we have before us. So we are awake already. We are no longer somnambulists. We're no longer walking our lives asleep. We are pretty much aware. We are conscious already. And because of that, it talks about a level of spiritual maturity. And in doing so, we won't punish ourselves and we realize that we have made a mistake. And then we will seek daily, strive daily to work on the knots of things that still live behind. A big one is forgiveness. Anybody here have issues with other people? Right? But what do we do when we understand that the greatest charity that we can do is benevolence, indulgence, and forgiveness, as explained by Christ, the beep, right? Benevolence towards everyone, indulgence towards the forgiveness of others, and forgiveness for the offenses. Forgiveness is something that we seek from others. So perhaps this is one of the things that has led us to walk astray for many, many experiences in different lives, which is why often we are brought on that same life along with others that we have erred with in the past or sinned with in the past. And so reincarnation gives an opportunity to do better, to do it again. As spiritists, as reincarnationist spirits that we are, we understand that life is giving us an opportunity to go and sin no more, so that the illnesses that we have brought on ourselves Do not keep on dragging and making us feel so miserable, because it does. And if you haven't been able to forgive someone, you know that that's one of the things that cause a lot of suffering. It's so great. I was talking to my husband one night. I like to do it like 2 a.m. He loves it. I'll wake him up with a question, just wondering about that. And he's like, just open the Spirit's book. It's there, I'm sleepy right now. Yeah, that's him. He's so patient with me. How wonderful it is to not feel imprisoned by the shackles of being unable to forgive someone, which doesn't mean that we love them immediately. But then, do we already do the exercise of loving one's enemy, right? Are we able to not put barriers for communication, for reconciliation? Are we able to wish other people well, right? Like, oh, I don't want to deal with them right now, but I don't wish anything bad upon them. That's the Christian, spiritist, awareness, conscious way of living. So my suggestion would, going back to the beginning of the answer, do as St. Augustine would do at the end of each day, make an assessment of the actions and strive better to do it daily, or strive daily to do it better.
The others are the same, right? Yes. Kirsten, you can hold the microphone. It's for you.
Are you sure you don't want to do a Suzana or Anahy?
You got to ask if it's an easy one or a hard
is
one.
it?
If it's a hard one, you pass.
Yeah, it's getting easier.
Okay.
No, it's not, but it's good for you. I like that question for you. How do we show our vulnerability when the world tells us that to be vulnerable is to be weak?
Channel your inner Renee. Channel your inner Renee. Yeah. Perfect.
We have to live our truth. It's as simple and as difficult as that. We can attempt to try and be something that we are not, try to live accordingly, check back and see how you feel after that. But that's why a lot of us are in so much of this inner struggle, because we live this duality of who we are, who we really are, who we present to the world. But until each one of us is able to be authentically who we are, to be able to sit in our shame, in our darkness, in our shadows, and come to know it, we can't truly come to the light. So how you do it? My suggestion, because I have about 5 more seconds, is to pray about it and ask for your own personal guidance, because for each one of us, it's very unique. It's very different. What looks like vulnerability to you may not necessarily look the same to me. And that's okay. And it's so interesting because right before we came up to the stage, a little interaction happened. A mistake was made. And the person who experienced the mistake was so tangibly embarrassed. And Suzana, what did you and I say? Sit in the shame. It's okay. It's okay. So also, me being my best version of myself, living what I believe, is the best thing I can do. Because then others would get inspired. Just like many people have become very inspired by Dr. Brené Brown's work on shame and vulnerability, created a ripple effect. That's all.
Thanks. Suzana. So, how do mental health practitioners can assist clients in directly connecting with and receiving healing and guidance from helping spirits? You want me to read again?
Sure.
Yes. So I'll give you 5 seconds more to think. How can mental health practitioners assist clients in directly connecting with and receiving healing and guidance from helping spirits?
Okay, so the mental health practitioner has to have some belief in spirituality. That's me processing the question. And then wants to guide the patient or the client to connect with the spirits. Is that what is being asked?
Exactly that.
I think that, well, first of all, the client needs to be open to the idea of spirituality and the existence of another dimension. But if the client is, then I always think that the best path to connection is connection to oneself. If you connect to yourself, if the mental health practitioner is able to facilitate connection with the self in first place, restoring a sense of integrity, of dignity, then the person might be able to, because when we are in a state of confusion or mental health illness, any issues, a lot of times we lose perspective. We're in a very narrow place. We can't see beyond. So I would say that the first step would be to facilitate this integration and connection with the self. Once you restore that sense of dignity and connection, you can say, start to introduce perhaps the idea that there is something else to connect to, both outside and within you. So I'm not sure if it's a very broad question, I think.
Don't kill the messenger.
And who is this healthcare practitioner? Who is the client? I mean, it's so broad, and it would depend a lot on the healthcare practitioner, on the case. What is the case, right? So, but I truly believe that connecting with yourself is connecting with the divine, is connecting with God within, and that opens every time that we promote this healing. It opens opportunities for connections beyond yourself and better quality of connections with everyone, your neighbors, incarnate and discarnate. The rest, it's very personal. The person needs to be open to listen. Healthcare practitioners need to be mindful and respectful of the moment. One of the greatest qualities of healthcare practitioner, I'm not one, but I have been in therapy for many years in analysis, and the good healthcare practitioner respects the time of the patient and walks with the patient together side by side in the patient's pace. And so having had this experience, which I want to say was one of the best experiences of my life, and I want to say this too, since I have the microphone and the lights, we spend so much money and so much of our resources with the things that will not provide us what we need and the treasures that we are going to take with us once we leave this world. Our mental health is worth it. It is probably most likely the very best investment that I did in my life, because you're investing in the mortal spirit. And it is the type of treasures, it is the best inheritance that we can pass on to our children, that we can help the new generation. Sometimes we ask, how can we help the world, right? How can we help our children? The answer is you got to invest in yourself, on your own mental health. So please do so. And sorry if I didn't answer the question, because I don't think there is an actual answer for the question.
I think that answers, you.
Good, maybe.
Yes. No, but what you did was that in the beginning, you moved around without finding the direction. Suddenly you found the direction and you went through it, which was
Good.
beautiful.
I thank the good spirits for that.
So, Dr. Fonseca, should we be suspicious of alternative medical practices, expansion of medical reach? There are so many out there. How do I identify the good from the bad?
Wow, I like the questions. They're challenging.
Yeah, not simple questions.
Yeah, not simple ones. Well, maybe it's kind of the questions that a question that was proposed to Suzana. But what I can say that, for instance, in Brazil, we have a national health system. Okay, so anyone can go to a hospital, even foreigners, and will be seen and taken care of. But of course, this would be great if all the treatments were available, which they are not, but the basic ones, yes. But to this day, there's something interesting that happened. They started accepting, I wouldn't call alternative medicine, but we call complementary medicine, okay? There are things like healing, imposing of the hands. There are things like mindfulness that I was talking about. So I think a better term would be complementary medicine, not alternative. But I know there are lots of what we call alternative medicine. I would, maybe this question would join all of the others, because Andreia talked about being awake. So if we believe in the spirit and the immortality of the spirit, and if we believe in reincarnation, I think we are pretty much awake. And so I would say that, and together with what Suzana and then and all the others were talking about, I think it's a personal thing that I just came to my mind. A spiritual leader was asked, what is the best religion? And the answer was the one that makes you better, a better person. So I would go in this direction and say what's the best treatment, the one that really works for you. If we are talking about alternative or complementary medicine, it has to be. There's no other way, because what we say in the medical field is that a treatment is only considered in medicine if it has gone through all researches and decades of follow-up, controlling to see if the person really gets the health that the treatment is supposed to give during many years. We call the follow-up. So alternative medicine doesn't have to this day this kind of research, this kind of follow-up. So many times, at least in Brazil and some parts of the United States, in Europe, from what I understand. So what happens that we need more research, we need to discuss more, and people that go to alternative medicine they will have to count on their own criteria, because if it's not gone through the regular paths of what we call science, that I think it's changing, thanks God and Dr. Marlena Nobre and all the people that came before us, because they open paths. We are talking about a new paradigm of in medicine also, that is the spiritual paradigm coming in the focus of all the scientists and all the researchers.
But one data that could be interesting for you, I don't know, here in the United States, I understand, for instance, that there exists regularly past lives therapy, that it's okay. But for instance, in Brazil, if I am a medical person, I cannot do past lives therapy. I can do if it's for research purposes, but I cannot do professionally and, you know, be paid for that. Why? Because it's not scientifically proved yet. So I can only tell that for the person that asked and for all of you that are hearing, I prefer the term complementary medicine, because then if things like Spiritist knowledge brings us, we all know the imposing of hands, the water, the fluidification of the water. I love what Chico Xavier, I think it was Emmanuel, I think, that, or Andrea Luiz, I'm not quite sure, maybe you guys can help me, but about the water, if you are stressed, if you want to say something, then the medicine peace water. I love that. So I would say it's complementary medicine, peace water, right? Just put in your mouth, don't swallow, and wait for, you know, wait to calm down to see if we're going to do something with that. So there are lots of things to be discovered in medicine field, and I think we are doing, you know, all this in the Spiritist movement. We are reaching the point that we know more about, and then science is changing. And so I would say your own criteria, and use what Andrea said, your awakened state. Trust within yourself and what's best for you, what feels right. That I would say that.
Thank you. Very good.
I'm just going to jump in here really quick.
Absolutely.
For those of you who may not be familiar with peace water, it is the idea of putting water in your mouth and not saying what you really mean when somebody's talking to you about things you don't like, right? It's very peaceful, right? Put a little bit of water in your mouth. Hold it, wait 10 minutes or 20 days or 30 years, depends on who you're with.
And then don't swallow.
And then don't swallow. Don't swallow. And peace water, there it is.
Thank you. So then, back to you. How does the planetary transition and spiritual and mental health are related?
Ooh, I like that one. How many minutes we got?
There.
All right, now, so let's just give some context really quickly. Within Spiritism, we sometimes use this term called planetary transition. And what we mean by that is everything else in nature evolves. We are evolving, we are growing. Our planet is also evolving. We are also graduating from a phase and going to a next one. But in every evolution, there are key moments that are important for us. There are like formative moments. There are moments that really help us transition to a new level of maturity. And we believe, given everything else that we have seen and the messages we have received for decades now, even hundreds of years, depending on how you look at it, that we are in such an inflection point in our spiritual collective history. We call that planetary transition. We are changing. Our planet is growing. It is evolving. So when this happens in this moment now, we are taking a lot of things at once because we need to move on. And so it makes sense that during these difficult times, these times of growth, we have an influx of challenges that are created for a variety of reasons that we should talk about some other time, right? But it makes sense then that as we are going through this process, that we are going to be exposed to a lot of challenges because we have to overcome them because we need to grow up. So that is the why we are going through all the things we are going in the world right now. We talked a lot today about what is going on and what do we do with it. But this is sort of a context of why does the world seem so harsh right now? It's because a lot of us who still need to do a little spiritual growing up to do, right, are here now and we are exercising our experiences and our things that sometimes are not the healthiest of choices to be able to move along with this planet. So Spiritual planetary transition has everything to do with the moment that we're living in because it explains to us why we have so many different things going on. We're all in this key moment of our own personal evolutionary lives, but also of the planets. And we have sort of like, for lack of a better term, a test. We're in school and we need to graduate from 6th grade to 7th grade. And it's rough right now, but we are all going to do it together. So it makes sense that during these difficult times, we may feel an extra sense of urgency, of confusion, because all of us are trying to figure this stuff out at once. And that's why the world is so tough. So when we think about mental health, we absolutely think about being okay with who we are, but we also have to understand that we are immersed in a collective content, right? So we are in this fishbowl called Earth, and everybody else is going through their own stuff. So now we have to deal with our stuff, but also get the vibes of the people next to us, which makes it hard, right? It's hard for you to be upbeat when there are a lot of negative people around you. And it's also hard for you to be negative when there's a lot of happy people around you. It's quite annoying sometimes. Sometimes I want to be negative and people are so cheerful, right? It's frustrating. But you get my point? So we understand that this is the reason why we are seeing so many difficult challenges and different events out there, because we're all going through this natural evolutionary process that can be explained through reincarnation and the natural evolutionary path to things. And we are just very fortunate to be able to live in this moment in time, because it means that we can give a wonderful contribution to the betterment of our world, not only of ourselves, but of the world in general. So some people can say like, did I really have to be born in this moment in time? So hard. But we should also put our glasses on and say, we have asked to be here because we can give something back. We can help the world move along. So mental health, definitely an important component. Planetary transition definitely explains why mental health is such important now and why things are so tough.
Thank you. Andreia, back to you. You spoke about Jesus, right? How can we talk about Jesus without alienating those that have religious preconceptions and problems with Jesus' figure?
By applying the golden rule. Do unto others as you'd wish them to do unto you. That is a universal law that can be applied to anybody who is not even religious, because if you consider the phrase in itself and you start to ponder about this, you do. Would I wish unto Kirsten something that I wouldn't wish upon myself, right? And vice versa. Would I wish upon her something that I would wish for myself? So we see a lot of hesitancy at times with Jesus when we participate in mediumistic meetings or spirit rescue meeting, depending on how you come to know of it. Spirits that have had a really negative experience with Christ per se, because of what they might have suffered in a previous life, right? So the angle is quite hard because you don't want to alienate, you don't want to offend. It's one of the very common questions that people, ask. Isn't it a little pretentious when Jesus says, I am the way, and nobody can go through to God unless through me? And of course, it's about the teachings, it's about the lessons, it's about pretty much what he has brought, and it's uncontestable. And that's one of the things. When we look at the gospel according to Spiritism, and Marcelo said, don't take the phone. I'm like, I'm going to take the phone in case I have to cheat. But it's right there in the introduction, right? Where they bring about 5 points in which one is uncontestable. It doesn't matter who you are, what religion you are from, whatever it is the moral content of the message that we have found in the gospel according to Spiritism. So to make it short, because I know we like to get another round of answers, right? I would say applying the golden rule and thinking about it would be a good way to go about it.
Thanks. Kirsten. So a problem that we talked about a lot about suicide today, right? But an equivalent problem that we have in the US nowadays in most of the cities is drug addictions and overdoses, right? How Spiritism can help.
Wow. So many ways, but we have so little time to respond to this question. So I'm going to say that's probably my saving grace. But there's so much that Spiritism can offer. But I will say this. One beautiful thing that Spiritism offers us when we are thinking about our brothers and sisters who have fallen into addiction for a variety of reasons. It's something we were sharing earlier today. One of the things that shocked me, even working in healthcare for 15 years and having worked with addicts for over 10 years and have seen what I think is, I've seen it all. But sometimes when you see, like when we came here to Portland, and I was so struck by this gentleman that I saw on the street yesterday. And of course, my first reaction was horror, because, I hadn't seen that so openly in a public space on the street. But as soon as I thought that, I immediately thought to myself, my God, this could be my son, either one of my sons who are 5 and 3. And I looked at this gentleman who was not old, and I saw my son. And my heart wept, because he has parents. He has a mother. This is what Spiritism offers us. Changing our perspective, because how many times have we walked by these individuals and scoffed at them, judged them, used some choice words, even if it's just in our own mind, and say that they are, as many meetings over the years I've attended, hearing government officials use choice words in such individuals, that they are a drain on the healthcare system. But Maya Angelou said something really beautiful, and she might have been quoting somebody else, but she said, until all of us are free, none of us are free. This is what Spiritism has to offer us. Change the way we see one another. It will change the way we begin to act. It's a starting point. Thank you.
Thank you. Suzana, on the same...
An easier one this time?
Yes, very easy.
Let's go.
On the same topic, how can Spiritism helps us? We live in a time of a lot of discrimination and prejudices, gender, race, and others. How Spiritism can help us?
Yeah, that's easier. So how can Spiritism help us? Well, Spiritism helps us, as Dan likes to say, when we put those lenses, right, of immortality. One of the ideas that I like to think the most is that Spiritism eliminates what we call nowadays otherization, the other. The other is someone who's always different than me. The other is someone who is often below me. When I see someone as the other, whatever that other might entail and encompass, I distance myself from the other, and I understand that we are different. We usually see someone else as others as a way of protecting ourselves and putting ourselves in a higher place. So Spiritism helps us by teaching us that we are all equal under God, that we might be having different experiences due to our needs, our spiritual needs. But everything that we see and we use to label one another is material. Our biology is material. We are in physical bodies. The same way that the color of our skin is material. So Spiritism helps us to understand that we are in a physical body, but that we are not that physical body. Who are we? We are all children of God with the same potentialities, with the same possibilities. And we are in the present moment. And I love this exercise, which I usually suggest for people to do. Try to imagine yourself outside of the physical body. What is left? Whatever your answer is, that's you. That's you. It has nothing to do with your profession, has nothing to do with your name, with your position, with what you do. It has to do with what you feel. It has to do with your emotions. It has to do with your experiences. It has to do with your learning, your achievements. That's you. It's your unique way to carry all these achievements and relate with someone else. That's you. And whoever you are magnificent, because there's no one else in the entire universe like you. So we learn to look at one another, and that's another exercise, is to, when you are looking at someone else, can you see beyond the eyes? Can you see beyond the physical? Can you relate with that being as a spiritual being? So Spiritism is very powerful in its message and in the invitation that it gives to each one of us to practice that. I wish I could say that I have no prejudice. That's not true. We all carry them. We all have them. So the very first thing that we need to do is to acknowledge our own prejudices and our own difficulties. It's okay. We come from a culture, we come from a number of incarnations. We are under a culture that is constantly telling us what we should do, who we should like, and we still see minorities and majorities. So the first step is to recognize our own prejudices and then keep working on the understanding of who we truly are and practicing, recognizing, be aware of when your own prejudice is playing a role in a relationship. And question yourself, why do I need to see this person as other? What is it that in this person is threatening me, is causing me fear and the need to distance myself? So Spiritism brings a lot of material, but again, the material will go only so far. It needs to find a heart that's open to emotional honesty, emotional analysis, and the willingness to do the work to end any type of prejudice.
Thank you, Suzana. Very good. So, our time is up, but before we go, Dr. Fonseca, I'm not going to let you go without talking to us, saying your final. But
I was free from the question.
I'm going to go easy on you. Just share with us your experience today. You don't know, first time in a Spiritist Symposium. How was it? And, what are you taking from this?
Okay. Well, it has been a pleasure to be here talking about all of this, and also a practice, let's say, because just following Suzana's steps and everybody else's. This knowledge, I was talking earlier about the collective unconscious as the transpersonal dimension of the psyche. And it's there, psychologically speaking, that we have the archetypes. We're not going to talk about that, but our common inheritance, spiritual and psychic inheritance as human beings. And I think Joanna uses a lot of Jung because he was almost there. He almost talked about the spirit as our, as Allan Kardec said, the intelligence force of creation, about consciousness, because, as Suzana said, we are children of God. So we are co-creative forces, intelligence. And that's why Jesus says that whatever I do, you can do, and even more. Of course, he was being kind, but okay. So the thing is that to realize that we have all this potential, as Suzana was saying, I think it's very, very important in these times of, as Dan said, of transition. And as Kirsten said also, I saw too the people in the streets, and we saw a lot in Brazil, but when we get to the States, it's kind of strange, because you think as, oh, in a first world country, you wouldn't be seeing things like that. But I think one of the things that the pandemic taught us to this day, because there are a lot of common traumas have happened in the past for all of humankind, but into our days, is that there are no really limits. We were all in the same boat, right? So it didn't matter if the person had money or not, was this and that, because the resources were, the medical people didn't know what to do and had to learn and all of that. So we were stressed. We had some control of different parts of our society, in the way that people were saying things, information. We made a little mess of things in the social media and WhatsApp because everybody was stressed. But I think what this symposium means, and it's so, so important, is this realization that doesn't matter, in the worst case scenario that we have, in the traumas collective, we don't know what comes in front of us, but we know that precious moments like this, and the way that we can connect, even if with people that are in their homes watching and will be watching later on, to have this understanding that we are really one in the depths of our psyche. So in our spirit, there is no difference, because we are children of the source, whatever you call the source, God. So all the potential, as Suzana was saying, is within us. And the capacity to create. And we are beings of light, even if the shadows in some of our brothers and sisters and in ourselves still remain, but we are illuminating them. We are, and Jung says, I'm finished with that. Jung says that the purpose of this life is to kindle, I think we should say, a light in the darkness of the soul. So if here we have, kindled some lights, turn on some lights in our souls, that's good enough. And every achievement, every step on the way that we go further, we can know that we are not alone, because everything that I conquer in terms of the soul and the spirit, I share with all of you. So Dr. Marlene Nobre would say that we shouldn't be personalists, we shouldn't get stuck in our egos and our persona. Why? Because she had the knowledge, growing up with Chico Xavier by her side. I wish I was there, but we all have our guides, so we can be okay with that. We are not alone. So what happens is that every step of the way, every achievement in terms of evolution, we are sharing. And we are sharing our shadows too. But if we integrate them, if we illuminate, if we do, as Kirsten said, that we look to our brothers and sisters that are suffering, that are kind of lost, momentarily lost, because we are all evolving. And think of them in terms of light, the light that they will be, that there is, even if it, it's dim, but there is inside of them. And they will, be someday more light. Then we can follow the paths of Jesus. We can, because he was healing us, doing that, kindle lights inside of each one of us. That's why he said, it's not me that did, it's your faith. So let's keep doing this wonderful job.
Thank you, Andreia, Kirsten, Dan, Suzana, Dr. Fonseca. Thank you all for the answers, and thank you all for listening to us.